welcome everyone to the 2023 version, our third year of filibuster protest and activism. It's great to be back here with good friends and comrades. I'm Catherine Frazee, along with Gabrielle Peters, one of the co-founders of the filibuster. And I know that all of you have been following with interest. Many of you have been pouring your hearts into the ongoing work in defense of our people from the eugenic implications of MAD expansion. It is heartbreaking work, soul-crushing work, but deeply life and death important work. So I want to thank you all for that and for the efforts that I believe all of us have been making to keep our people alive and keep ourselves alive and care for each other as this process continues. It's been a tough few months, and it was time for a party, time for a bit of wickedness, time for a bit of truth-telling, time for throwing a bit of shade on the government's so-called report. And I think we're going to, all of us together, get into the spirit of that tonight. Co-hosting this evening will be Q, who I think everybody in the filibuster family is very familiar with, and Frankie, who will be co-hosting with them this evening. So my job is just to welcome you all aboard and hand things over to Q. I guess I should have done a visual description. It's evening out here in Mi'kmaq, where I am honored to live. So I'm in a somewhat more warmly lit space. An older white woman wearing glasses in a power wheelchair, bookshelves behind me, and various life-supporting technologies in front of me. And yeah, not much has changed since last time, except I'm even older and even grayer. So with that, let's move back a couple of decades, at least in generation, and hear from the people who really know what's happening. Q and Frankie, over to you.
Thanks, Catherine. I just a brief visual description, and then I will pass things to Frankie. I am a white, androgynous queer. I am in my bedroom, and so there's a bit of chaos behind me, but otherwise I am simply sitting in front of my desk wearing an oxygen cannula and a toque and sweater, and really just smiling a lot because it's great to be back in this space. Over to Frankie, who after their visual description will also do a land acknowledgement for us today.
Hi, I'm Frankie. I am a white, non-binary person, and I'm sitting in my bedroom as well. So there's a off-white wall behind me and a rack of clothing. I'm wearing a blue sweater and glasses. And yeah, I just wanted to start out with a land acknowledgement. So I'm joining from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And this event, there are people joining from all across what is known as, colonially known as Canada. So there are people joining from all different territories of many nations. And just also wanted to acknowledge that MAID laws impact Indigenous people in specific and disproportionate ways. Indigenous people face a lot of medical racism and neglect, and we know that that feeds into the ways MAID affects Indigenous people as well. And also just to acknowledge the resistance and advocacy Indigenous groups have been doing against the expansions to MAID. And yeah, just wanted to acknowledge that work.
Thanks, Frankie. On that note, I want to highlight something that kind of illustrates a certain element of how access to health and home care in so-called Canada is not equal. Just to speak briefly to something that people may have heard of called Jordan's Principle, which was named for Jordan River Anderson. He was a young Indigenous boy who I am unfortunately in my brain fog did not write down the nation that he was specifically from, but Jordan was born with a form of muscular dystrophy that required intensive care in a hospital for the first 2 years of his life. And he, I'm sorry, my brain fog is really getting the best of me right now. Jordan's story is one that I care a lot about. So this is not very good timing for this. I think people who are returning to the filibuster may be familiar with my brain fog. It is not new, but it is worse than it has been. The point of sharing this is to make particular note of the fact that Indigenous people on and off reserve receive healthcare that is incredibly inequitable in ways that lead directly to their deaths. And I'm aware that we likely have Indigenous people with us right now. And cognitive blips are difficult. I'm sure we all understand. Again, the point of this is to say that the story of a rich white woman having the privilege to die with a glass of champagne in her hand, that is, you know, a large part of the reason why we have arrived to the point we have with regard to MAID laws, is not many of our lived realities. It is important to know that and to speak that loudly while we're fighting these laws, is that we are fighting for those of us who are receiving the least equitable care and are at most risk for coercion and systemic injustices. So that is our opening today. It's a bit of a heavy one, but we're here to experience our grief and rage together. I am going to screen share a comic drawn by Sage Ponchi, who I am grateful to follow on Twitter. And while that is screen shared, I am going to read some words from Gabrielle Peters, who hopefully we are all very familiar with. But Gabrielle is a phenomenal writer. And the piece that I am going to read, the first time I tried to read it aloud, it had me choked up in a very important way, I think. So here is Sage's comic or cartoon. And while that is shared, I am navigating back to where I have G's writing. Here we are. So this, I'm not sure if this is the title of the piece or just what G wrote as the document name, but it is currently titled Poor Crip Hope. Asleep in the sheets, Molotov in the streets. I am rolling in piss, shit, and blood. I stick a dead fish in my mouth and clamp down until the eyes pop out. I braid maggots into my hair as I lay in a bath of spoiled food bank milk infused with month-old, no-frills value pack ground beef, writing my recipe for 1 gallon of billionaire bisque. I may stink, but I still have more dignity in the fingertip that just emerged from my nostril than your suicide drip punctured into crip skin at the hands of a physician delivered to our door by the capitalist system. You can bleach the blood out of your white lab coats, but it still shows up under the red light of revolution. Fuck you, death cult. Fuck your rights that are wrong, kill me slowly. I demand you give it your best shot. Let me die with my fist thrust into your throat. Okay, now that I've scared away the liberals, let's talk about hope. Poor people are given the shit version of hope. Hope for us is the voice you hear but can't see when the side of your face is pinned to the pavement by their foot. It tells you to shut the fuck up and stop complaining because it's your own flawed fault. All of it, whatever it is, and you'll pay for thinking otherwise. But hearing them means they haven't shot you in the back yet. Their hope is bootstrap. A welfare worker behind glass yelling next while security steps behind you to remind you that you've had your chance. Hope is self-hate wrapped in a myth of meritocracy. Hope is the middle-class savior lady speaking for us, reading our words and pretending she knows what they mean. Nothing about us without her. Please keep your seat in the VIP section. Poverty tourism is so last century. That's their hope, not ours. Hope doesn't have to be about striving and achieving and climbing ladders so you can piss on the people below you. Capitalism is the opposite of hopeful. Kaylee's bed is hope. Q's fridge. Lucia's art, Tanya's voice, Oriana's grocery lists, Arlie's cuts, Rabbit's smile, the Kelowna crew saying not all of us agree in a sea of white conservative conformity. Luna sends Care Bear. Luna is Care Bear. Sunny is a beautiful beating heart. Sage Ponchi sums it all up. Hope is my neighbors not calling the police on the person screaming out the pain the rest of us keep contained. Hope is the half-broken toilet seat that hangs on just enough. It's cooking a pot of soup for my dying neighbor so he could put a drop on his lip. Hope is bungee cords, duct tape and twist ties. It's water bottles in the backpack that aren't for you or anyone you know yet. Hope is alike when you confess you're different. Hope is snot sneaking past your lips because someone made you laugh in the middle of a downpour. It's a nod on the sidewalk. It's the guy dropping his bike loaded with cans. Hours and hours worth of his work to rush to your defense. It's the two skateboarders who helped chase away a creeper and apologized for hesitating, promising next time they won't wait to follow someone else's lead. It's all the taxis driving away when they see the wheelchair after midnight in downtown East Side, and a lineup for a club not giving a fuck about you. But the homeless man who'd been watching at a distance is on the verge of tears about the cruelty of treating you like this. The quietest, gentlest voice apologizing for humanity. They shouldn't do this to you, he said, offended by the injustice I was experiencing. It's the mouth thank you before she ran as clumsy me blocked him from following her. It's texting need help and all the chair users converging around the old white man who was planning on disrupting the Black and Indigenous women's panel. We don't hold a debate or appeal to his reason. We know his reasons. We show up when called and we ask questions when it's safe. Hope is the crows who, even after 2 years of me inside, still remember the time I chased away a bad human. Would come and sit beside me, watching those around me with suspicion. Research shows poor and working class people value interdependence over independence and always have. Tells you something about whose voices have and have not been dominant in our community. Poor people don't talk much about rights because we don't have a lot of them. You have to be someone the system believes to exercise or demand those. When has the legal system been on our side? I'll wait. I thought so. Fighting this legislation is important and necessary, but not one thing. Not one single thing poor people have is a result of someone presenting the best argument in a courtroom or parliament. The middle class will tell you Tommy Douglas created Canada's not really universal healthcare. The man who wrote his thesis paper in support of eugenics. Saskatchewan brought in healthcare after World War II, which also was a period when workers were making huge strides. Hard to break the strikes of people who just defeated the Nazis and had childhood memories of the Great Depression and are thinking the manifesto made some good points. We scare them. Us, collectively. Danger they pose to us is not new to us, nor is dehumanization, but it is escalating and worsening daily. There is no doubt about the threats. What has been missing in this fight is us, our ways of being and knowing. Other people need to stop repeating our words. Our voices come with our presence. We bring more to this than photos of empty fridges and stories of what we don't have and what we lack. Fuck that deficiency frame. Seriously, fuck that noise. They should know better. We are fullness. We are stone soup. It is the poor Crips, poor and racialized, poor and queer, poor and racialized and queer, poor single parents, working poor, poor with no legal ID, poor on the street, poor in care, poor locked up, poor sleeping in threadbare sheets, poor even as the rich get richer on their stolen land. We are hope. We are the only hope. I love you folks. I realized that I did not give a visual description for Sage's comic, and I apologize for that. And I will do one now as we sit with G's words. So Sage's comic has a large kind of column in the center of a blurred kind of crowd with fists thrust upwards. And this column is labeled class. And on top of the column are 4 people. One is a wheelchair user. One is a woman in a skirt kind of pantsuit. There's a person in a pattern suit and a person in just a shirt and pants. That last person is holding a sign that says ally, and there's a speech bubble coming from all of them that says same. In the crowd below that is visually quite chaotic and massive, is shouting, "Stop killing us." The words coming out from them in several spots. That is the visual description of the cartoon.
Thank you for sharing G's words and G for sharing them. And yeah, I just wanted to mention that there will be a few more things shared, and then we're hoping to open up a space specifically for poor Crips to speak. And we ask that others just listen for this first portion.
So I think it's time. Kaylee had some words to share. If Kaylee can be given speaking permissions.
I'm looking for Kaylee. The image, maybe I'm missing them.
I'm also actually not seeing Kaylee.
There's
What's her?
Kaylee Huber. Thank you, Harper. Oh, there. I now see Kaylee.
Sure. So I will.
Yay. Am I here?
Yes.
Hey everybody. Last week or 2 weeks ago, CBC had a call-in show that was asking about the expansion of MAID to soul mental illness. And I tried to call and I tried to get in, but I don't think she liked what I had to say. And so I thought I would share my unedited version, which I did even edit down for her a little bit, but yeah, I'll just read this. This is incredibly personal to me. As someone with physical disabilities and mental illness who has struggled with MAID as a method of suicide for over a year, I can tell you offering assisted suicide to people with mental illness is not compassion. This is true whether depression and mental illnesses, health issues come alongside physical disabilities or as a standalone mental illness. Track 2 MAID has not been compassionate within my own mind since my suicide is now rational, sanctioned legally and culturally, and is constantly in the news. There's nothing compassionate about turning to mental health professionals who are no longer unequivocally against my suicide. I recently spent 10 weeks in the CAMH psych ward because assisted suicide laws, or MAID, has undermined my mental health and my ability to cope with worsening physical disabilities and pain. It has undermined the mental health professionals whose job it is to try and help me find hope to live now and for the rest of my days, not help me plan my death if that's what I really want. And by the way, premature unnatural death due to a cocktail of drugs is one of two things: suicide or murder. I'll let you decide which one when it comes to MAID. I myself call it social murder. MAID itself has caused me to be more suicidal and torn away at my self-worth. The biggest fear of my psychiatrist on the psych ward was that I would tell other patients I was considering MAID. She was terrified, worried about the suicide contagion. How is this going to work on psych wards when it is available for soul mental illness and everyone has the right to die? The government and media keep talking about MAID applicants and assessors and the MAID process. What about the months and years before that? How are mental health professionals going to do their jobs? How many Canadians who would have recovered or gone on to live long, meaningful lives will die? Are we really going to sanction suicide? Apparently, we already have. Shame on us all. I also thought I would give you all a personal update. It was a year in April when I came here and told you that I wouldn't be alive in a year. Since then, I've gotten support from so many of you, either when I write on Twitter and a few of you more up close and personal. And I'm still here. And as of January, I have 100% turned away from MAID. I feel like I'm a living example of why MAID is so dangerous. I could be gone already. Poverty, lack of healthcare, lack of mobility aids, lack of home care, lack of pain management, my trauma history, internalized ableism, long-standing and current circumstance-related depression and suicidality could have killed me because of Bill C-7. I just needed, I needed the things I needed, like a new bed, where I now live like a queen, a rollator, and care. I needed healthcare, doctors who believed me and told me that my life was worth fighting for. I am eternally grateful for Disability Filibuster as an online community, to Gabrielle and Catherine and a few more of you who have held my hand, who have let me vent and encouraged me in our DMs, for all of your love. I would not have been able to withstand the nagging of the MAID monkey on my back, the assisted suicide contagion in this country, the various pressures of Bill C-7, and how it has changed the mental health care system. I have been fortunate, but I know lots of people do not have what I do. I, along with so many of us, need Bill C-7 to die, to be burned and buried. So when times get tough again, I have unequivocal support to live. We all need and deserve that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee. I really appreciate you reading what you wanted to say on air. And I also love the update about where you're at now. Makes me really happy. Just going to do a brief announcement here, just in case anyone is confused. But if you get a note that you've been promoted to a panelist, this is just us inviting you to be on screen if you wish, or just kind of generally in the Zoom space. You're welcome to be camera on or off, or to not come into the main space and just keep watching as you are now. If you want to be invited in again, like if you decide to just keep watching as you are, and then you decide that you actually want to be back invited into the main space again, please message Tracy in the chat. I will tag Tracy so that that is easier for everyone if you wish. Well, seems like that is not something I can do. I think Trace is the only one in the space that is Tracy, though, so you should be fine. Again, Kaylee, I felt like I moved on a little bit too fast from your words. I really appreciate what you've said, and your naming the factors that went into your own mental and emotional pain with C-7 being passed the way it has been. I want to invite Harper. Harper has, I think, some songs to share with us. We are going to stop the recording while Harper is doing their portion, but I look forward to Harper's music as we get great. Genuinely, I really enjoyed that. That was really fantastic. Yeah. So we are coming to the end of our first hour, and that means that we just have time for a poem from Frankie that I am very much looking forward to. And after this poem, we will have a panel discussion about the report.
Right. This doesn't have title because I wrote it yesterday, and I don't like writing titles. As fickle and fraught it is to frame a thing in relation to who is deserving. I want us to know, without a breath of hesitation, that we deserve safety and solidarity. It is worth saying because it is far from a given. You deserve safety at the grocery store and solidarity at the pharmacy. We deserve to be shown our lives and well-being are worth protecting in the masked faces of strangers and in passing exchanges with healthcare workers who have the power to risk our lives and to coerce us into death. We deserve safety in hospitals and on street corners. We deserve solidarity in all the places we wish to go to find connection and community, and all the spaces we want to be to share our joy and grief and peace and rage. We deserve safety in our beds and in the bathroom. We deserve safety when we are at our most vulnerable and need the most care. We deserve solidarity when facing a world that's decided our way of being in the world is worse than death. Solidarity from people who have never known what it is to navigate the world as disabled. Solidarity grounded in humility and willingness to fuck up. An ability to listen and change. Solidarity that centers those most impacted and doesn't latch on to the first disabled perspective that aligns with their own. Solidarity that's discerning and leverages power without overpowering. We deserve safety on social media and in all the sanctuaries we visit to be seen and heard and felt, physical and virtual. We deserve solidarity from retail workers and customers and clothing designers and architects and engineers. We deserve solidarity and safety in elevators and public bathrooms and stairwells and waiting rooms and hallways. We deserve solidarity in all the spaces they never imagine us to be, and safety in the places they force us into, where invisibility shelters violence and neglect and humiliation. We deserve enough safety to spend zero energy fighting to be considered and accommodated, fighting policies and systems that are killing us, calculating risks we should never have to take, recovering from the cognitive dissonance of moving through a world that chooses large-scale denial over collective care every time we leave home, or at home and outside of it, or in whatever spaces we're surviving. We deserve enough solidarity to never need to compromise our safety and survival to be with family or friends or community, or to work, or to access the care we need and the food and meds to sustain us. We deserve to never need to carry the burden of other people's denial or shame or disgust or lack of imagination beyond the abled life they know. We deserve space to imagine care-filled, radical, liberating, joyful, pleasure-filled, sustainable, connected futures. the conditions to believe they're possible, and the collective power and solidarity to carry them out. We deserve so much more than the fucked up world we wake up to. More than is possible to imagine. And your ancestors did too. And so do generations to come. There is big grief in this impossible present. There is endless rage in this love of ourselves and each other forced up against a violent world. Rage and grief too consuming to hold alone, but collective enough to hold together just a little bit easier. And there's space for it here. There's space for my grief and rage here, and there's space for yours too.
Feels like a breath. So I think we are, on that note, moving to the panel between Catherine, Isabel, and Ramona. It'll be a panel discussion about the report. I invite y'all to unmute yourselves and put yourselves on camera if you so wish.
This will be,
I can't. You can't put your, it says the host has locked your camera.
Okay.
okay, Tracy will
Tracy.
take care of that, yeah.
I can fix that for anyone who's in the Zoom space. And then if anyone again wants to join from the attendee space and come over, I just need to make you a panelist. So maybe you can send me a message and let me know.
Yeah. Can you allow Ramona and Isabel Grant to
Yes.
turn on their cameras?
You bet. Hang on.
Thanks.
Okay, while that's happening, let me just say this is not an easy transition to make, you guys. Those were such incredible creative contributions, and to shift, I mean, from all of you, from Kaylee and Harper and Luna and Gabrielle, it takes an incredible fortitude, in my estimation, to shift from that point of devastation that this relentless onslaught brings us to, and to shift into a creative voice and to express that. You know, as I was listening to all of your contributions, to the incredible power and relief that I felt as I listened to everyone's work. You know, our generation, and by that I mean all of us who have lived before Bill C-7, we are the last people in Canada, people with disabilities, to know what it is to live before and after this arrival of the ultimate eugenic expression of our very equality, of our very law and principles of equality, an expression that cuts into the identity of all disabled people, whether we're conscious of it or not. Everyone who is born after, every disabled person who is born after March 17th, 2021, or everyone who becomes or has become disabled since March 17, 2021, has no touchstone, we'll know only what the world is like as MAID becomes more and more normalized. And so I just want to really underscore what I think everyone is feeling, how incredibly important it is. The contributions that you're making, the record that you're laying down of how this law is impacting us, is changing our understanding of our place, and is burdening us with this big grief that Frankie spoke about, and this big work, and this big fight that we are all engaged in. So I just felt that I had to take a moment before we plunged into the nerdy bits of this evening's disruptive activity to talk about the report of the legislative committee. And I recognize that not everybody has had the time or the stomach to read this full report, but I know that Isabel and Ramona have done so. And so I encourage all of you, if you have questions, I'll ask a couple of questions. Q and Frankie, you'll be timekeepers and alert us when it's time to move on. I'm thinking, are we 15 minutes or something like that? Is that what you'd like to?
Yes, if we want to keep with our plan, there's about 15 minutes for the
Okay.
panel.
Okay. So what I thought I would do, Isabel and Ramona, is start just by asking you both to share your top level impressions. What stood out or what stands out for you other than the sort of blanket outrage of the collective effect, of the cumulative effect? If you can sort of point out some of the low points or the most concerning points from your reading, and then if people have questions or comments, we can maybe have a moment to hear from them. Who would like to start? Isabel, are you good to go?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Catherine. And just want to echo what Catherine was saying about the statements and songs and poems that were read earlier. Thank you. Thank you all very much for those. I mean, I guess sort of big picture, what stood out to me in reading the report is how people with disabilities are like a little piece of the report, as if sort of MAID isn't really about them. It's just this small piece that we have to think about on the side. And then the second sort of big picture thought I had was that it wasn't said this politely, as I'll try to say it, but it's like, how stupid do people think we are, right? In terms of, you know, some of the things that are in the report, you know, like getting rid of the word disability. Everybody in this group knows that only people with disabilities have access to MAID in Canada. And whether the word disability is there or not will not change anything. So one of the recommendations in this report, recommendation 5, says, think about ways to destigmatize people with disabilities without limiting their access to MAID. And one of the ways to do that, they suggest, is just to get rid of the word disability. So irremediable medical condition or disability just becomes irremediable medical condition if that recommendation is followed. So I mean, the idea that that's going to alleviate the stigma when the fact remains that only people with disabilities have access to MAID, I think is somewhat insulting. The scariest parts of the report for me were the parts about children and people with dementia, or, you know, people who do not have capacity. The report recommends immediately opening up track 1 MAID to people who are labeled mature minors, which is essentially a child, usually around the ages of sort of 14 to 16 or 17, but I'm hoping Ramona can say more about that. And then there's some kind of obscure language about, and we're going to study this problem or this issue over the next few years, which sounds like code for we're going to move towards expanding track 2 MAID for mature minors as well. And once track 2 is expanded, you can be sure that mental illness will be part of that picture for teenagers and children. So that's obviously one part of the report that's very upsetting. And another part for me that horrifies me, frankly, is the idea of advanced directives. So this is someone who, while they are capable of giving consent, leaves a document indicating that they would like to access MAID in the following circumstances, and they can set out what those circumstances are. Presumably, they could set out a person who will, although we don't know these details yet, who will be able to trigger that for someone. There are no details given at all about some of the obvious problems with that. The Carter Court talks about someone who has clearly consented to MAID, and with other forms of consent, we do allow advanced consent to medical treatment, but not advanced years and years and years in the future. There are other activities where the Supreme Court of Canada, like sexual activity, where the Supreme Court of Canada has said you cannot give advance consent. There are no details about how much force will we use if somebody resists when it is decided that it is time for them to access MAID when they are not able to consent. So there are all kinds of problems with this. And there are other recommendations in the report, and I want to turn it over to Ramona, but just those, I think, are some of the more troubling ones. They want an expert panel on people with disabilities, just like the expert panel for mental illness. And we all know how that one went. So it's a very, very discouraging report overall, and hard to say anything remotely positive about it. So I'll turn it over to you, Ramona, to just give your initial impression.
Hi, everyone. I do want to say I was very touched by what I did hear before we started this discussion. Disclaimer, I have not slept in 24 hours because my little one had anaphylaxis last night. So I've been up at the hospital. And so I have not organized my thoughts for today the way I had planned to. But Isabel did review, and I'll just give my thoughts around what she said. I noticed in the chat that Samuel has shared the Quebec bill. I think actually that's a very important point to touch on. I don't know if Samuel can join us for just a minute to share about the Quebec bill, because it's going to, I think it will greatly play into what's going to happen in Canada in terms of these things going forward. And the Quebec bill is very disturbing. I agree with Isabel and with everyone else here that this report it broke my heart, right? We tried so hard, so many people went to bat, so many of our community spoke so well, so eloquently to the evidence, to their lived experience. It was heartbreaking to see that these people could be so hard-hearted that they could just come out with their same stuff that they come out with every time speaking over us. Makes me so upset. I'm very sad today. I was very sad to see that report that they could even use our words and then just continue to kind of use our talking points, but just kind of like talk over us and still go forward with what they are doing. And to ignore for Health Canada to testify at the AMAD committee and say, no problems here, but then know that the data is totally insufficient, but not admit that, to have many witnesses bring that forward. Really heartbreaking that they would just say, everything's good, we're going to go forward. All the problems that people brought forward about the expert panel for mental illness, the conflicts of interest, Mona Gupta's ideological bias that led to 2 people resigning. The way the whole committee went should not have surprised me for the report. They spoke over many of us, asked questions that were super loaded and gave us only time to answer with 1 word. but I'm still very, I'm very sad anyways. I'm probably also sad because I'm sleep deprived. I'm sorry. About mature minors, just to echo what Isabel said, we have seen even with track 1, so reasonably foreseeable natural death with the irremediable medical condition, that many people with disabilities were targeted under track 1 prior to the expansion for wrongful deaths, people being offered, made, or suggested to them on the basis of their disability just because they were said to have a shortened lifespan, which is interpreted, because reasonably foreseeable natural death is not a medical term, has many creative interpretations that are being used and is extremely dangerous already for adults and will now be applied to children. For advanced directives, Isabel already did talk about how we don't know how this will play out, and I think Samuel's been promoted and will speak for that how it might roll out in Quebec and what that might mean for us. But for example, there's the coffee euthanasia case in the Netherlands of a lady who had an advanced directive, and but she didn't seem that unhappy when she moved. She kind of seemed a little bit down. Someone else decided to enact her advanced directives, but she seemed to resist, and so they ended up drugging her and holding her down while they administered euthanasia to her. And I think that speaks to this kind of, it's just another level of ableism. And people are saying, well, it's my life, my choice. But actually we know from the medical perspective that with advanced care planning in general, so forget MAID, even our decisions about whether we'd want life support, whether we want this, if I would be an absolute DNR, often people change their minds when they're in that situation. And so advanced directives are in general not that safe, even from a medical evidence perspective. There's a lot of problems with advanced directives. And so to allow this when death is the outcome, when we know that most people would change their minds, we know that most people with dementia rate their quality of life much higher than their caregivers or people around them perceive. And I think that that's also for people in our society who have these kind of ableist biases. They might say, I never want to live like that, but actually they might not be acting in the best interests of their future selves, because actually when they're there, studies show that actually their quality of life is quite high and they're actually happy to be living despite their dementia. So the committee glossing over everything, for palliative care, the lack of funding, for really not touching the kind of relationship between no options in terminal illness and palliative care and MAID. The same thing for disabilities, not understanding. They kept using this kind of legal argument that it would be discrimination. I think they actually, was it Catherine's panel or somebody else, they kind of targeted with questions, trying to make it sound like people with disabilities were discriminating against people with disabilities by trying to exclude them from MAID, when really it's only people with disabilities who are offered death for their suffering. It was just horrible, and the report reflects that. I'm sorry, but a bit loopy today. It's not super coherent, but that's, I think, my thoughts around that.
And maybe I'll just add one detail, which is that they're wanting their committee to be brought back together again 5 months before MAID for mental illness, solely for mental illness is enacted, so March 2024. And this is the same committee that we've just been talking about. So again, I guess we all know how that will go. So we're all going to have to experience this again, in just under a year from now.
Yeah, and Samuel, do you want to chime in and help us understand what the Quebec bill is about?
Sure. I mean, like it's a pretty recent bill. Like it's been published this week, so I haven't have all the details figured out yet. I mean, that's to take the information with a grain of salt. But it's pretty much opening an advanced directive MAID, and even if they have built-in kind of safeguards, quote unquote, there is no way to know that those safeguards will be respected, and they're basically is bringing the problem of letting death happening is just the natural death happening is one thing. Consenting beforehand is just another thing altogether, and letting another person decide is really the problem here, obviously. So and even if they have built-in safeguards, that's I'm sure they will tell us that they did put safeguards in the law or in the bill. How do we make sure they're actually respected? And if anything, we've seen they're most of the time not respected, as it's been mentioned. And interestingly enough, the MAID Practitioner Association in Quebec just asked for a kind of a research or an inquiry anyway on why Quebec has been using MAID more than any other country in the world. And so this is raising important questions, and we don't have any answers. And so this kind of was timed with the presentation of the new bill. So that's interesting timing. I mean, frightening timing, really, but interesting. So this is not really good. I mean, the two things I could see that are actually less terrible are that they totally excluded mental health from MAID in Quebec. So you do not have access to MAID based on mental health, and you do not have access to MAID, or you can't have advanced directive if you're not competent. So if you're under guardianship, you cannot have access to MAID, and your parents cannot decide for you to have access to MAID if you're under guardianship. So those are the two kind of less bad. Those are the points that really kind of, I guess, won, but it's not really a win, is it? It's pretty terrible all over. So, but yeah, that's a pretty dire picture anyway.
Samuel, did you mention the part about the hospices?
No.
So the one other thing I'd like to add about the Quebec bill that I think is extremely disturbing is that the province is going to force every hospice to have to include medical assistance in dying as part of their services. So for people who are looking for safe spaces, like places where they can go that are MAID free, they won't be able to have that. And since spaces that offer MAID feel that part of informed consent, they must raise MAID as an option, we're going to possibly have an increase in rate as everyone is aggressively offered MAID as a treatment option when they enter palliative care or hospice care.
And we've already had Leonie Hertz, who's not here today, but has talked about how that's going to make it. We're going to lose doctors who don't feel that they can ethically offer MAID to their patients, so that if we take that step, some doctors will just go elsewhere because they can't practice under those conditions.
Yeah, and that leaves all of us who want doctors that we can trust not to raise the topic of MAID with us when we're in a vulnerable situation. That leaves us unserved, really, by the medical system. Yeah, it's I think, Isabel, you mentioned this, others have spoken of it. There is so much gaslighting in the report, the ways in which it is remarkably blatant, how our own words and our own statements have been flipped on their head and turned into the reverse of what we actually said. Those things are provably false and just extraordinarily indicative of how emboldened this committee felt. I think we all knew that by how they were behaving in real time, but to see it on paper in this way has been quite shocking. And just for, yeah, go ahead.
Just going to jump in. Kaylee raised a point in the chat asking if Quebec can exclude mental illness if it's a federal law in 2024. And Samuel has said they could, it will go to court at some point. And I just think that that is, as Ramona also said in the chat, like that is an important note and also worth discussing.
If I could just say, because what it means for everybody is that if the federal law is wide open, we can still lobby provinces to have provincial college regulatory safeguards. I am under the understanding that right now the colleges are being proposed by the federal government, some kind of fake safeguards, and what I've heard of people who've seen them, that are probably not going to add that much protection for us. But we could probably lobby the provinces, because it seems the federal government is a lost cause. We need court cases. We need lots of different ways to try to go about this. But I think actually talking to our MPPs about safeguards already, so besides Quebec having this bill, Alberta's premier has said that they will not support MAID for mental illness, and I feel like one of the Atlantic provinces has said the same. So I think that if we can lobby the provinces to have tighter safeguards, and this is not good enough because it's still there, but it can be an incremental win for us.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Can the feds not withhold, like, can there not be pressure from the federal government to withhold healthcare transfers if provinces do that? Like, my
So
understanding.
for example, Northwest Territories has many more restrictions on MAID. I haven't looked at it recently, but a few years ago I did when it started. And for example, Saskatchewan and Manitoba keep MAID very separate from palliative care. So as far as I understand, in Manitoba, MAID is a totally separate entity from palliative care. So there's no confusion of which services you're accessing. And so there are ways to do it to make it safer. Not that I'm saying that it's safe, it will not be safe, but to make it safer that the provinces could enact if they had the political will to.
That realistically, the federal government does have the power to put a lot of pressure on provinces through transfers.
Of course,
they haven't done that.
What the federal government
yet,
has
but
said,
they can.
I mean, they're all double speak, right? Like, so, you know, who knows what they're saying. But they have said many times, even in AMAD and during the Bill C7 hearings, when we've asked for safeguards, that their job is to just make criminal exemptions. And if they make broad safeguards, there's some talk, I was talking to, I can't remember which MAID assessors, but that, you know, then they'll be scared to do MAID, and that all this actually is up to the provinces, that they were encouraging the provinces to make extra safeguards, and that they were just making broad legislation. I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's what they said over and over again in committee.
Yeah, and
But if
I mean, politically, then the possibility of the Trudeau-Mathy government putting pressure on Quebec with respect to MAID, that's pretty hard to imagine for me right now. I think they're pretty well aligned with Quebec on this file, so it will be interesting. I see that Diane Bridger has entered the conversation. Hey, Diane. Speak
Hi, Catherine. Hi, everybody. Happy to join you all. I wanted to see what you folks are doing. Last Friday, I attended a meeting at the University of Manitoba where we had the head of the MAID doctors panel, Dr. Kim Weeb, and also ethicist Arthur Schaefer from U of M talk. And we heard a very cold story, as folks have said. The coldness was bone-chilling to me. And I spoke up and said, we have only heard one side of the story. And actually on March 1st, there will be a panel hosted by the Community Health Sciences faculty at U of M, and Catherine Frazee will be on those panels. March 1st, there's a Zoom link And I don't know if folks are aware of that, but I could send that to one of the organizers so folks can tune in. Our story isn't being listened to. And in fact, when I pointed this out at this meeting, I was interrupted after a few minutes of saying that they were talking like all people with disabilities support MAID because a small group in Manitoba years ago called PEP, led by Teresa Ducharme, was for it, for medical assistance in dying. And of course, that group of people were 3 people. And I said, you have not been talking to representative groups of people with disabilities. We have been fighting this for 40 years in the courts. So my question is, who's doing a court challenge and why don't we have one yet? Now, I may just be totally naive here, but why aren't we doing one? Because we've done lots as a movement in the past.
I mean, I think that's likely that there will be a court challenge. They just take a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of work. So I don't think it's going to be quick. And we all know that people's lives are being ended while we wait. So there is pressure to bring one, but I think that's inevitable that there will be one. Whether it will be successful, I don't know.
Is anyone planning one right now? Does anyone know of anyone planning?
Yeah,
I can say that I was connected with a family who had a patient with many things that are quite alarming about how MAID was carried out. They were connected with a very good lawyer because we want to have a case that wins. But the lawyer hired a MAID assessor to look at the case, like trying to do their due diligence to try to understand if they could win this in court. And of course, the MAID assessor is biased, but the MAID legislation is so wide open that even though this gentleman was offered MAID, given it on the wrong diagnosis, has questionable capacity, he was confused and they had to rebook it. The lawyer dropped the case and felt that the legislation is so wide open and the physician is so protected that it would be hard to win that case. And that's what's happened for me anyways, with several people that I know who have contacted lawyers. So I think people are trying. It's a matter of getting the right case. And I don't know, like having everything taped or something, because if it's not in the chart, apparently it's hard to prove. Anyways, Catherine, you were about to say also you have a case.
Just to confirm for Diane that there is at least one case that's been in the works preparing for at least a year. And I think too, you're on top of this. Kaylee has something to say.
I'm actually saying that we're coming to the point where, there's a lot of discussion to be had, but we need to wrap up a bit here. So yeah, it's a obviously 20-30 minute discussion is not going to do the nuances justice, and there's a lot to be done, but that's going to have to be ongoing conversations and communications between folks. So yeah, that's where we're at today.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks you for that signal. And I'll just add that I agree. There are some major strategic discussions to take place of how we respond to this report, or if we respond beyond tonight's burn up. And so keep your eye on the filibuster feed, and hopefully there will be an opportunity for us to get into it.
Can I just say really quickly in response to Kaylee's question, I don't think it'll make a big difference. Kaylee asked a question in the chat, but I'm happy to send you an email or whatever and explain that.
Yeah. Yeah, Kaylee's question was, does it change the calculation for a court case if they take the word disability out? So yeah, that is an interesting conversation to be had as well. So I appreciate you just giving a very quick response to that so it doesn't go completely unaddressed. And yeah, definitely folks follow up about things over email if you have people on social media. Catherine, can you remind folks of the email, the filibuster email again, please?
Oh, isn't it disabilityfilibuster@gmail.com? Somebody find.
Yes. Yes, that is correct. I had a complete brain fart, so. disabilityfilibuster@gmail.com. It is now also in the chat. Thanks, Tracy. I know that the hand that is up right now is G, so I'm not sure if that's intentional or not, but if you have something, G, you have the floor. Seems unintentional because I haven't received a message, but yes. We are in the we have reached the final stage of our event today. I think arguably the cathartic moment for us all to participate in as we are able and see fit. I am, of course, speaking of the burning or otherwise destroying the report together. We are going to start with sharing a burn that was recorded by Garth Mullins, and after that, everyone is welcome to burn their own reports, or some, if you're unable to print it, some symbolic form of the report that you have on hand. I will share my own destruction on camera, and anyone else that is on camera is welcome to do so as well. But we will start, as I said, with Garth Mullins' burning of the report, which I have queued up here, and I will make sure to share the sound because I think it's great. Can I get a nod from like Catherine or Isabel, because your cameras are the ones that I can see right now, that y'all can see
Yes.
the report on
Yep.
screen? Great.
Yep.
Awesome. So here is the first burning, and then we will do it together.
So a comrade asked you to do a bit of policy analysis, and so of course you're gonna. And here's the policy, here's the analysis. So let's one-hand Zippo light this mother. All right, this is a little Eastman policy analysis here. See if the cops try and interfere with our policy analysis. Yeah, not so good there. There we go. That's a little bit of what we're looking for. There it is. So, thank you for your kind attention. And I hope that's got to the right place. Everybody happy? I am.
Thank you, Garth. As you said, a bit of East Van policy analysis. I am indoors and do not feel comfortable setting ablaze this report while I am in my bedroom. So I personally am going to rip a few pieces of paper up, although I would love the catharsis of some fire right now. And it's just going to go directly into this dirty old bin that I have on hand. Anyone else that is participating in this bit of rage and grief, now is the time. Let's get to it. Oh, that feels good. I feel like there should be some loud music playing, you know? Let's just chuck it in the bin. I've read it enough times. I'll read it more, but for now, just in the bin. Let's do it all together. Luna said Lincoln Park's Burn It Down should be on Garth's burning video. Don't have enough hands to put it on right now, but I totally agree. Again, as Harsha Walia said and was unfairly punished for, and as many of us activists say all the time, let's just burn the whole thing down. Speaking to the systems that keep us. Oh, there's Kaylee's burn right now. Really great. Thank you, Kaylee, for the fire. Love that. There it is.
Burn it down.
Awesome. Yeah, the list of recommendations right there. That's where it belongs, as Garth said. In the trash bin. Yes. Yep.
There
Luna
she
has
goes.
given us the lyrics. We're building it up to break it back down. We're building it up to burn it down. We can't wait to burn it to the ground. That's the right energy. Rabbit Richards has said that they lit sage from the burning paper. Beautiful symbol there. Anyone that wants to come on video is welcome to, and I think able to. Yeah. Oh, that's a good blaze going.
I hope people can circulate Kaylee's video there.
Should have recorded it.
I mean, this is being recorded, so
right. We
can make a shorter video out of this. Share it around. Tara or Tara, I know it's pronounced both ways, said, I'm hoping this video and all will go on social media and to Parliament. I think that would be fantastic. I can't make any promises, but I think it would be great as an individual.
It's dead.
Oh, you killed it. It's what we got to do.
Yay. Videos being projected onto.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Project it during their special committees. Okay, well, I felt a bit of release. Like just having a bit of fire on screen is always a good, strong moment.
Fire in a trash can.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. This is just about the end for today. We are going to close. We're a little early, which is a rarity. But we are going to close with a minute of silence together. And then after that, Frankie is going to read us a powerful poem that G shared with me, and I think it's very fitting for the end of all of this. And Catherine, if you have any words before the minute of silence to welcome us into that moment, you are welcome to share anything you like. No pressure.
Sorry, just had to find my way to the mute button. Q, thank you. I think it's all been said, except thanks to you for braving and pushing through brain fog and other impediments and hosting this really important moment of catharsis and statement. And thank you to everyone who has participated. So please, let's take a moment now to think about the, well over 200 as of a year ago. We have no idea how many more since then. that people who have died as a result of medically assisted suicide since the arrival of Track 2 MAID, our brothers and sisters, the kids who will never grow up to become shit disturbers, the elders who will never be able to share their wisdom, and all of the people who won't come through the way that Kaylee and others of us have come through dark times. So let's remember all of them.
I'm gonna close it off with a poem by Eva Gore Booth called Comrades. The peaceful night that round me flows breaks through your iron prison doors. Free through the world your spirit goes. Forbidden hands are clasping yours. The wind is our confederate. The night has left her doors ajar. We meet beyond earth's barred gate, where all the world's wild rebels are.
There are now tech things to do to close this up, but thank you to everyone for your time. Thank you to Gabrielle and Catherine in particular. Gabrielle, especially for your notes, prompting me in the brain fog. And thank you to our ASL interpreters, our captioners, Isabel, Ramona, Kaylee, Harper, Kate, everyone that is here. I don't know if I've thanked Tracy already, but thank you, Tracy. That is closed for today.